A sada prelazimo na našeg sledećeg govornika i prvog govornika koji će fizički zauzeti binu danas ovde sa nama. On dolazi iz Crne Gore, gde je pokrenuo niz zapaženih projekata i organizacija, a rado je viđen predavač i gost mnogih konferencija, kako kaže, od Perua do Tajvana. Vladimir Vulić je strateg za digitalne transformacije, on je profesor na fakultetu, suosnivač Digitalizujme i programski direktor Spark.me konferencije koja zaista staje rame uz rame sa mnogim svetskim konferencijama. Vladimir je aktivan na preseku tehnologije, poslovne strategije, liderstva, inovacije i promena. Kao iskusan TED govornik, danas će nam izneti svoja zapažanja, iskustva, ali i konkretne korake kako da HR dobije rat za talenat u digitalnom dobu. Vladimira, izvoli.
Just one, first they asked me to speak in English, so I'll speak in English. Next, one small clarification, I'm a former lecturer at the university, or as I would like to say, I'm a recovering academic. And trust me, it takes a lot to recover from 12 years teaching at the university. So the blue-eyed, handsome guy you can see at the slide is the hero or the anti-hero of our story today. You all know him. His name is Henry Ford, and he created what used to be or is arguably the most sophisticated industrial system in the world. He built the Model T, so he didn't invent the car, he didn't invent the assembly line, but he democratized the car. He made it possible for an average citizen in the US to own a car. How did he do it? Well, one day he went to Chicago to a butcher shop and he saw something for the first time ever, an assembly line. So instead of workers moving, workers were standing still in one place and the assembly line was moving the parts. The parts, in this case, were butchered meat. So his idea was, can I use the same system in car industry? So he actually did. He took the facilities from Chicago, moved it to Detroit, and he used the assembly line for the first time ever in car industry. And he used to do every single thing. So there was no outsourcing, or he didn't allow outsourcing to happen back in the day. If he wanted tire, he made tires by himself. Where did he get rubber from? He didn't buy them. He actually grew the trees from which you make rubber. When he wanted to make windows for the cars, he made the glass by himself. So every single thing was made by Ford Motor Company. And then assembled on the assembly line by the people working at the Ford Motor Company. But there was just one little caveat. And the caveat was, yes, the people have a brain. They don't only have two hands. The thing Henry Ford needed for the assembly line was just two hands, and that was it. Leave your brain at home, I'm interested in your two hands. Unfortunately, people come bundled with the brain. So this is the first snapshot in a 3-snapshot story I'm going to tell you in the introduction. The second story comes up at the end of 1997, the beginning of 1998. The seminal research from McKinsey titled The War for Talent. I was a university student when this came out, and a couple of my professors have been quoting this research throughout the 4 years of my studying. And I was really looking forward to a brighter future of companies, the brighter future of HR. So even nowadays, this is something management consultants like I am will somewhat cite or will often quote. But guess what? Most of the things people from McKinsey wrote in this report still didn't happen. In fact, some of the things put out in this report 21 years ago are even more far from reality today than they were 21 years ago. How come? How is that even possible? Well, this is one thing. Enrique has been telling a lot about hierarchies. Well, this is how hierarchy looks like in real life. Well, yes, but. 30 years ago, Peter Drucker famously said that in 20 years' time, by 2008, a typical company will have 1/2 of management levels, so just a half of management levels, and 1/3 of total number of managers. So in 1998, he said, in 20 years' time, a typical company will have 1/3 of management levels and 1/2 and 1/3 of total managers. What happened in real life? In real life, now we have more management levels than we ever had, and we have more managers than we ever had. So we had brightest minds in management 20 or 30 years ago that couldn't guess what's going to happen in 20 or 30 years' time. They were way too optimistic, and looks like we're going backward in time. And now for the third snapshot. This is, I don't know how to pronounce the name correctly in Dutch, but I'm gonna call him Jos de Blok. If anyone speaks fluent Flemish, please correct me. So about 2 weeks ago, there was one of the biggest management conferences in the world, the annual Global Peter Drucker Forum. And one of the speakers, pictured above, is this guy called Jos de Blok. And the slide says he slayed the sacred cow on stage. And because we're at an HR conference, you know that the sacred cow has something to do with HR. So what did he actually say? He said that if you want your employees to be happy, get rid of the HR department. Do not have an HR department if you want your employees to be engaged and happy. So who is this guy to tell us, quit, cancel, nix, null your HR department? Well, turns out he's the co-founder and a CEO of Buurtzorg, an organization in Holland of about 15,000 nurses. 15,000. Each year, they get about 1,500 more nurses. So next year, it will be 16,500. Guess what's the overhead? How many people are working in the HQ, in the administration? So 15,000 nurses, how many people are working in all other functions? HR, R&D, finance, legal, whatever. Everything else. 15,000 people, how many are working in the HQ? 100? Well, it has to be at least one, him, Jos de Blok, so it can't be 0. I'm going to give you an example. Back home, when I used to teach at the university, we had about 60 university professors, and we had about 80 non-academic employees. So 60 people teaching and 80 people not teaching. Janitors, finance, HR, and everything else. Here, last week I had a talk with a colleague from Belgrade who was telling me about a company from Serbia who has an HR for every 7 to 8 employees. So there's 7 to 8 employees, one HR. We recruit 7 or 8 more people, another HR. 7 or 8 more people, another HR. And he was telling me this as the best thing ever, the most innovative company in the known universe. Well, these guys have 15,000 20,000 employees and 50 people working in the HR, plus 20 trainers. Number of people employed in HR, as you've already guessed, is exactly 0. So how do you do it? Enrique said the magic word. Self-managing. You have small, flexible team of nurses doing the actual job. So one small team of nurses is actually a mini company. The only thing done by the HQ is legal and wages, and that's it. One of the comments about 5 years ago was, okay, this system is magic, it works. However, this was the new company, started from the scratch. If this was a legacy company, if this was a hospital, there's no way this thing could work. There's no way you can make a transformation or a digital transformation in order for this thing to work, because nurses are already used to a system that was working. Well, guess what? The guy proved them wrong too. About 2 years ago, the largest home care organization in Holland was about to go bankrupt, the traditional one. So what did he do? He offered to buy them. So on Friday at 5 p.m., they closed the doors and they basically went bankrupt. He had the 20 coaches I mentioned, organized the training on Saturday and Sunday. And on Monday, the company started working using the same principles as Buurtzorg. So not only was the transformation actually possible, it took them 2 days to make it happen. So now he has 2 companies that work in the same way. One is Buurtzorg, which was started from scratch, and the other one was the legacy company, which transformed in the meantime. So what kind of change are we actually facing in the world? What's going on in the business world today, and how is it impacting HR? Well, first, you can see the average lifespan of a company. It's going dramatically down from about 60, 65, 67 years all the way down to 24 years. It's projected that by 2025, it will go down to less than 20 years. So from the moment of the inception until the company reaches its maximum, until it's no longer in existence, only 24 years on average. Next one is that in last 15 years, 7 out of 10 biggest corporate bankruptcies in history have occurred. So last 15 years, 7 of them. All history of capitalism, just 3. That's how much the situation is getting more complex. And then you take into account 1,000 biggest companies 10 years ago and 1,000 biggest companies nowadays. And you compare the list. 70% of the companies on the first list are not on the list nowadays. It doesn't matter, it doesn't mean that they don't exist. It means that they're not on the list, which means that there might be through the process of M&A and so on. But they're not relevant any longer. 70% is the churn. So then you bring in a management consultant and you ask him, okay, so this is the situation. What are we going to do? And the only thing that management consultant is ever going to tell you is innovate or die. You need to innovate or you're dead. If you don't innovate, you're going down. The new variation is disrupt or die. You cannot go to a management conference. You cannot read a book by a management consultant unless there is innovate or die in it. So poor people working in a corporation actually try to innovate, and they innovate. However, it's not just that easy. 2/3 of new product launches fail within just 2 years. So yes, someone's telling you innovate or die, innovate or die. You don't want to die, so you try and innovate, and you launch many new products. And within 2 years, 2/3 of them have already failed. So what does your manager tell you? Well, you need to innovate more or you're going to die. And I'm going to make super motivating posters that say innovate or die and hang them around the office. I even have a client who painted the corridor to his office in block capital 3-meter words, innovate or die. So can you imagine going to work every single morning at 8 a.m., walking in the office and seeing innovate or die? That's not the way, first, it doesn't work, and second, that's not the way how you motivate the employees. For example, any Game of Thrones fans in the room? Okay, so imagine if Mother of Dragons, Daenerys Targaryen, was your CEO. Instead of saying, innovate or die, how would she motivate you? What does she say when she sentences you to death? There are no Game of Thrones fans in this room, trust me. She would say, innovate or Dracarys. So if you show this to your boss, he would be laughing. However, he still thinks that innovate or die is a good slogan to use. No, it's not. I would even prefer to have innovate or Dracarys in my office than stupid innovate or die. So if you want to look how change looks in the business world in a single photo, this is it. This is the same sport. This is the same team. Basically the same car. The same part of the car. It's just that a couple of decades is the difference in timing. The one on the left looks like a kid's toy. Like my 4-year-old nephew can drive it. He has a Formula One similar to this one. But the one on the right looks like it came straight out of a James Bond super villain car. And when you're driving, you're just afraid that if you press the wrong button, it's gonna shoot lasers or rockets or something. Technology has changed. The business environment has changed. Our workspace has changed. The one thing that hasn't changed is us, humans. We didn't grow an extra pair of hands. We didn't grow an extra head. The same poor guy has to be driving this Formula One car. So how can he do it? Well, we're going to provide business education for him. We, as HR, are going to invest so heavily in him that he will be able to do it. Why? Because employees are our most valuable assets, right? Well, wrong. We like to think so, we like to say so, we like to write books about it, but in real life, we're just not doing it. In fact, it turns out that employees are our least valuable asset. Because whenever given an opportunity to invest, we always pick technology over people. So the number of days and the amount of money HRs and companies all over the world have been providing to their people since the 70s is going down continuously and is going down as we speak. So it's just that we're paying lip service to education. In reality, we are not doing it. To make things even worse, it's not just that we're not educating our people. We are not even asking them about the job they're doing. So, how much do you have in the way you do your job? How much voice do you have in the way you do your job? It's been going down significantly since 1997. People have less and less and less freedom in the way they do their work. How much does your team, your work group, have influence on what tasks to do and how to do your task? Both things are going down drastically, both for managers and employees, since the last 20 years. And how often are you consulted before the objectives are set? 20% of people. How often are you involved in improving work processes? 18%. How often can you influence decisions that are important for your work? 16%. And how often do you have a say in the choice of your colleagues? 10%. So this is how much, and if you ask anyone, even a first-year economic student, what is the first thing to do if you want to have a successful transformation project? They will tell you, we need to involve people in the change process. Well, this is how much we are actually involving people. And despite all the evidence and despite all of the talk, we have been involving them less and less and less throughout the years. If you like Masters of the Universe, if you ever seen Masters of the Universe cartoon, basically the only one who has the power is He-Man. And that's what he proudly says every 5 minutes of the cartoon. I have the power by the power of Grayskull. And that's basically how our companies look like. We have one person or a couple of persons having all the power. And others are just sitting around the table, basically listening and doing nothing. If you've seen the Batman Lego movie, you remember this scene. The number of great ideas generated by me and by everyone else in the cartoon. Obviously, all the good ideas have been generated by Batman. The rest of the team, absolutely zero. This is how we basically feel and look in a typical organization. So what has happened in the past 21 years? The McKinsey's war for talent has actually turned into war at talent. We have declared war at our talent. We are basically making it harder for people to come and work for us. That shouldn't be our job. So with all this situation going on, how are employees going to feel? Well, when we asked one of them, he said, I would prefer to go to the dentist's office instead of coming to work for you. The situation is that bad, and I hate you so much that I prefer you can take my wisdom tooth out, but please just don't bother coming in the morning. When you ask them to do a questionnaire, this is basically how they feel. Well, is it rewarding? Well, no. Is it satisfying? Well, no. Well, what it is? Well, it's slowly crushing my soul. And if you've seen Office Space, the best HR movie in history, this is the best scene, the scene that describes how a typical employee feels. So they are asking him, how are you feeling? And he says, it's so bad that every next day has been worse than my previous day in the office. So every time you actually see me in the office, that is the worst day in the history of my life. So this is how employees feel. But do we have any actual research data on it? Well, in fact, we do. And we've been having it for the past 20 plus years. And the situation is not changing. Gallup does this once a year or once every couple of years for the global workforce and on a country level. So the number of people who are engaged, they love what they do and they give their 100%, is a poor 13%. 63% of the people are not engaged, which means yes, they're there, yes, they're working, but they're kind of slacking. They're not giving their 100%, but at least they have good intentions. But what's up with 24%? That's almost the double the size of the engaged workforce. The 24% is actively disengaged, which is a nice euphemism for I hate you so fucking much that I would like the opposing team to win. Yes, you're my boss. Yes, you pay my salary, but I'm gonna hurt you and your company so bad that I want the opposing team to win. So imagine this being a football team. A goalkeeper, not counted, and 10 players. You have one poor fellow trying to score a goal. You have 7 people basically doing nothing, just running around, come on, ref, blow the whistle, I want to go back to my wife and kids. And you have 2 people doing their best to score an own goal. That's their job. I hate you and I want our team to lose. Imagine being a football manager of that team, and there's no way you could actually win. But we have the same situation in our companies, and we are expected to win every single day. It's just not possible. So why is engagement so important? Well, because all of these metrics, so the good ones are going to improve even more if employees are engaged and happy, and the bad ones are going to decrease even more if employees are engaged and happy. Okay, so do you have any stories that this is actually going on in developed countries? Well, yes. All of these are 100% true stories, no matter how funny or incredible or impossible they seem. So the first one says that a Finnish tax inspector died at his desk, and it took his colleagues 2 days before they realized that he wasn't actually working that hard. He was basically dead. Can this happen in Sweden? One country the people from Western Balkans absolutely love. Well, yes, Swedish are even better at this than the Finns. It turns out that the Civil Aviation Authority did a research on its employees and found out that a part of the employees spent 3/4 of their working day watching internet porn. So you are up in the sky, in the airplane, feeling 100% safe because there's someone in the civil authority taking care of you, of your plane. And the guy is actually watching porn. A couple of friends actually told me that we shouldn't make fun of the poor guys because their job is so stressful that they need to relieve during work. And some other friends told me, well, they weren't watching porn, they were just watching Swedish action movies. Okay, but a German cannot absolutely do these things. Because in Germany, everything is 100% by the book, right? That's why we all fleeing to Germany, because there's no nepotism there, there's no slacking over there, and nothing. Everything is 100% by the book. Well, a personal hero of mine is a German civil servant who, once retired, wrote a letter to his colleagues saying, "Thank you, because you allowed me to not do a single stroke of work for the past 14 years. I basically did nothing, you people cover up for me, and nobody noticed. However, people from Mediterranean, including Montenegrins, just couldn't take these Finnish, Swedish, and German guys, so they had to make one-up them. They had to be better. So this Spaniard guy pulled the impossible thing. He didn't even showed up for a single day at work for 6 straight years. That's a dream of every Montenegrin. How on earth did anyone notice that he's away after 6 years? Because the computer system the HR department has every single morning sends you, an HR manager, a notification saying an employee XY is celebrating 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years in service in our company. So this guy was supposed to get a reward, a plaque, a golden watch or something because he spent 20 years with the company. However, nobody could find him. So they did an investigation and they realized that he hasn't been showing up for work for 6 years. So they took him to court and he took them to court too. He said he was bullied at work. So the court fined him 18-month salary, so 1.5 years worth of salary. But because he was absent for 6 years, that means that net he gained 4.5 years of salary. So guess what? When the court was over, what did he say? Can I please go to 6 more years of absentee and then I'll pay 1.5 years in penalties. So this is the problem. And now we go to managers and we ask them, okay, you've seen what the situation is like. Can you actually do something about this? Can you actually motivate, engage, and make your employees happy? And 70% say, hell yeah, I'm an engagement superman. Okay. And then you go to their employees and you ask them, can your managers engage you? And 82% say, hell no. So it's not just that we're not engaging our employees. It's that we don't know how to engage them, and we are unaware of the fact that we don't know how to engage them. So, you know when Jokic does a triple-double? Well, this is triple-double when it comes to engagement and engaging your people. To make things even worse, the research shows that there's a strong, direct, negative correlation between the amount of money you invest in leadership training and how much your people, your employees are engaged and have confidence in your leaders. So what we are doing is actually grow our leaders. In reality, we are making the situation even worse. So the more money we put into leadership training, the worse situation gets. Because the leadership trainings are actually making leaders even more distant to the people they're working with. And then you ask people, okay, would you prefer I give you a raise or that I, as your manager, get fired? 2/3 will tell you, just please go. I don't care about the money. I can do with what I have already. Just please go. If you ask them, is your salary enough? Most of them will tell you no. But if you ask them, okay, want to get a raise, or do you want me to fire your boss? Just please fire that loser. This is the actual situation. So now we've come to the burnout question. Out of spending 5 days in the office, how many days do you feel that you are burned out? That you are under severe stress? Done for the most countries in the world. So most chilled employees in the world are in Netherlands. So 2.68 means that out of 5 working days, 2.68 days they feel they're stressed, highly stressed. The EU average is 3.10. Croatia is at 3.31. Slovenia is obviously not going to let Croatia beat them. So Slovenia is up to 3.33. Unfortunately, Montenegrins come next, 3.39. I was sincerely hoping that we would be the world champions of burnout because no one in the world has it harder than we do. Well, it turns out that you people have it harder than we do. So 3.47. Unfortunately, you're still not world champions because Macedonians beat you to it and Turks beat Macedonians. So world champions when it comes to burnout are Turks. However, the important thing here is that this is self-assessed. This doesn't mean that these people here are actually working the hardest. This means that they feel they are working the hardest, which is obvious for Montenegrins, and they are not being rewarded in a real way. So when Peter Drucker, the most famous management thinker in history, was doing or talking about similar stuff, at one point in time he used to stop and he said, okay, to all you leaders in the audience, how many of you have some deadwood? Deadwood means an employee which is not engaged or disengaged, which is not giving his 100%. So how many of you? And almost every single hand in the audience would go up. There's no one, there's no team in the world that doesn't have someone in the team who's not contributing. But the follow-up question was, were they deadwood before they joined your team? Or they became deadwood after they joined your team? And in every single occasion, it turns out that they became deadwood once they joined our team. Because no one in their right mind would pick someone or recruit someone for their team if they were already deadwood. So what happened? How are we making deadwood out of talent? Well, this is the way how we do it. This is the way we've structured our work. This is the way we run our companies. And this is the super efficient machine that creates deadwood out of talented people. This photo is from 9gag, the site that posts humorous photos. So at one point in time I said, okay, so maybe this is not a real photo. Maybe this is a staged photo. So maybe these people are not actual employees. Maybe they're actors, paid actors. So I was about to stop using this photo in my talks. And then one day I walked through the streets of Belgrade and I saw this. So it's not 9gag. It doesn't have to do anything about what country is it in and what work and what industry is it in. This is how we structure our jobs. This is how we structure our work. And this is the default setting. Why? Because we're used to hierarchy so much that we have basically forgotten that there are other ways to structure a company, to run a business, except for the hierarchy. And we are die-hard hierarchy fans. The not so funny thing is when you realize which of these is actually you. The funny thing is when you realize who is your boss. Okay, so how do you get hierarchy to the absolutely absurd level? So, once again, this is a real photo. So this is the main square in Podgorica, the capital of Montenegro. During summer, it can go all the way up to 50, 51, 52 because of the concrete. So the good people in the local government of Podgorica were thinking about their citizens. And they've decided to put a water cooler, a public water cooler at the main square, which citizens could use for free. So far, so good, right? A noble cause. However, it turns out that about 2 meters to the right, there is a public water fountain. Completely free, completely drinkable, public water fountain. So why is this thing here? Well, no one knows. But because it's here 24/7, what are the good people of Podgorica going to do? Well, they're going to steal it and bring it to their home so they can have a water cooler back home. So then the noble people from the local government have to employ not the guardian of the galaxy, but the guardian of the water cooler. And because by law he needs to have a free weekend, we need at least 3 or 4 or 5 of these guardians of galaxy to guard our water cooler. So when you ask people, who are these guys? They tell you these are junior experts in mobile water supply. That's their unofficial name when you ask the citizens of Podgorica. This is how we structure work. And this is how the number of people increases. And then obviously, when we hire 5, 6, 7, 8 of them, who do we need now? We need a manager, we need an HR to engage them and motivate them. So this is what a typical org chart looks like. You're already laughing because you know that only in management books this thing looks like this. In reality, it looks more like this. So someone is selling drugs to someone. Someone has a secret gay crush on someone. Someone owes a favor to someone. Someone has kids at the same kindergarten with some else. This is in reality what an org chart looks like. And until we actually acknowledge that this is how it looks like, the things are not going to change. So I'm going to tell you a short story. It's actually a scientific experiment. It's set on the border between Czechoslovakia and West Germany. So when the Cold War started, they've built an iron curtain and it went straight through the national park called Šumava. One part of Šumava National Park is in West Germany, nowadays Germany. The other part is in Czechoslovakia, nowadays Czech Republic. And until 1989, no one could move. There's a herd of about 300 red deer in the national park. So when they've built the Iron Curtain, one part of the herd stayed in Germany. The other part of the herd stayed in Czech Republic. And they couldn't move until 1989. In 1989, this was torn down completely. So this is just a forest now. Nothing exists except for the forest. So scientists at the university in Czech Republic did a scientific experiment. Every single red deer was equipped with a collar with a GPS tracker. And they followed their movement for about 5 years to see what they eat, how they eat, where they mate, how they mate, and so on and so on. One thing they didn't realize, they will find out, was that they didn't cross the border. So if you put a collar on a red deer in Czech Republic, he never crossed into Germany. And if you put a collar on a deer in Germany, during the experiment, he never crossed into Czech Republic. And to make things even more complicated, a red deer cannot live more than 15 years, 15, which means that not a single red deer who took part in this experiment has ever in his lifetime seen the Iron Curtain. He doesn't know there's anything here. It's just forest. However, what he does is this. He's not going to go somewhere because there's something there which actually doesn't exist. Why? Because when a baby red deer, when a Bambi asks his mom, "Mom, why aren't we going that way?" The mom says, "Well, because it's been like that ever since I was here." "Why, Mom?" "Well, go ask your grandma." And Bambi goes to his grandma and asks the same question. And grandma says, "Well, because it's been always like that since I was here." "Why?" "Well, go ask your great-grandma." However, the great-grandma is already dead, and she cannot tell you why do we do it in that way. Are there any similarities to business? You're like, no, this never happens in our company. Well, I'm going to show you a very radical comparison to business. So in UK, there was a medical emergency, and there was a poor lady called Irmgard Cooper, with an M. Irmgard Cooper. She had a medical emergency, she was transported to the hospital, she needed an open heart surgery and a blood transplant. The surgery started, the doctor opened up her arteries, he said, "Nurse, blood?" She was like, "What blood?" "Blood transfusion, please." She was like, "But there's no blood transfusion." He started screaming, "Blood, blood, she's gonna bleed out, she's gonna die." She stormed out, and before she managed to get some blood, and before she managed to return and to do the blood transfusion, Irmgard Cooper was already dead. In UK. Why? Because the investigation showed that the bottle of blood said Irmgard Cooper with an N and not an M. So when the nurse was there, is there an Irmgard Cooper blood here? No? Okay, Irmgard doesn't need blood. One wrong letter. I was shocked. But then I found out that 7,000 people die every single year in the US because of bad handwriting. How is that possible in 21st century? We have computers, you go to a shop, they have barcode scanners. How come we don't have these things in the hospital? Well, it turns out we do have them. 90% of health workers have access to ICT at their work. However, less than 10% actually use them. And people die. Every single year, 7,000 because of bad handwriting. Why don't you use the computer? Well, because ever since I was here, this is the way we've been doing stuff. Okay, so what's then the future of management? How can we, as managers, or specifically HR managers, change things? Well, one of the most famous management books of all time has a story about Tim Tribone. He worked in a chemical factory, and every single weekend, the productivity of the factory increased twofold. So the output, the total production, doubled every Saturday and every Sunday. Every single week. So working days, normally, weekends, double. What was going on? What was the only difference in the work of the factory on weekends and on work days? Well, it turned out the only difference was that Tom, as the CEO, wasn't working on weekends. So his people worked twice better when he was not there, because he was not getting in the way. The lesson he took home was not, I'm a bad manager or I'm a bad person. It's that I was doing my job in a wrong way. I was telling people what they need to do, and the people knew much more and much better what needs to be done that I knew how to do it. So I let them do their job, and I was there to help when they asked me or when they said they need help. But they know how to do their job better than I do. You know that a typical manager cannot oversee more than 12 people. That's like the maximum a normal human being can do. However, it turns out that in Google, the span of control is 60. I was in Paris, Marissa Mayer was at the time in Google. She said span of control is 60 from the stage, and I yelled out, you meant 16, 1-6. And she said, no, I meant 60. And I'm like, but that's not possible. And she said, no, it's not possible. But you just said that in Google it's 60. Yes, in Google it's 60. But you said it's not possible. No, it's not possible. But you are doing it. Yes, we are doing it exactly because it's not possible. And I'm like, okay, now you've got me. Like, what's the thing? The thing is, a regular human being can do 12. If you're a superhero, you can do 15 or 20. But you can't do more than that. So they didn't want to put 15 or 20 or 25 or 30. They said 60. Because once you have 60 people to oversee, the only thing you can do is what Tom did. You can let go. You can let go and then ask, because you are judged on their output, on their performance, how may I help? And if they tell you nothing, just go away, shut up, that's what you should do. And if they tell you, oh, I need help in this way, someone from Google is there. You all know that Netflix doesn't have vacation policy, travel policy, or whatever. And then people say, okay, it's easy for a company from the US to do it because it's all fun and games and so on, but it cannot happen in a mission-critical organization. In a hospital, there's no way it can happen in a hospital. Well, it can, and it's happening. And it's been happening in this hospital in Canada even before Netflix did it. Why? Because they said, we only recruit fully formed adults. If, as a hospital worker, a medical worker, you can manage yourself. There are two surgeons. I would like to go on summer vacation in July. And the other guy says, perfect, I'm going in August. Perfect. If the other guy says, oh, I promised my wife I'm going to go in July too. If you can sort this out between you two, no manager, no HR, nothing, then you're fully formed adults who can work in this hospital. If you go back to mommy and you say, mommy, he doesn't want to let me go to summer vacation in July, then you're both fired. Because you have basically proven that you cannot be responsible for your own time and your own schedule. Valve, if there are any gamers in the room, you will know Valve, one of the biggest game distributors in the world, and they have a saying, each desk has wheels for a reason, and each desk has wheels. Why? Because if you feel you cannot contribute to this team any longer, the only thing you need to do is push your table to the other team and say, hi, my name is Vanya, I would like to work with your team. Who gets to decide? The team. If the team says, oh, we would love you to work with us, I'm working for this team now. If the team says, oh, we've heard that this guy is a pain in the ass, well, thanks, but no thanks, I need to find a third team, a fourth team. If no team wants to work with me, I have basically fired myself without any manager needing to do it for me. Buffer believes that in full transparency, you need to know not just your output, which you can see clearly, but your financial compensation. However, Whole Foods has been doing this for decades. So it's not a startup thing. It's not a Silicon Valley thing. It's a matter of, do you trust your employees, and do you believe in transparency, and do you want to dare to not treat your employees like mushrooms? Which means, yeah, do not keep them in the dark and do not throw shit on them. That's how you are not supposed to be behaving with your employees. What about a very mundane job? Chopping, dicing, slicing tomatoes. One of the most innovative companies in the world when it comes to HR. Every employee can buy their own equipment without consulting anyone. These guys in Belgium loved it, and now they're doing it too when it comes to brooms and cleaning facilities. No procurement office. I need a broom and I'm going to buy broom A. And the other guy says, oh, but I hate brooms A. I like the broom B. And the manager says, just go and buy your broom. I don't care. Use the tool you want to get the job done. You're the one cleaning the floor. You're the Andre on the photo. We're just observing from the way back. This can't work in Asia. Well, yes, it can. It works. It works in India, where Infosys restructures every 2 or 3 years. Why? Because when you ask, why is this done in this way? When you say, because it's been like this ever since I was here, ever since I was here can maximum be 2 or 3 years. And then everyone knows why is it done in that way. But this can for sure not work in communist China. Well, the place where it works the best is exactly communist China. The guy who runs Hire is the guy who gave the opening keynote at Global Peter Drucker Forum because of the innovative HR policies, one of the most innovative in the world. He says the workforce can associate in small teams the way they want. They can build things they want. And the organization, the corporation, is here to serve as a platform for them, as a support service for them. If you remember the start of my talk, the Bertsorg, the 15,000 nurses, that's basically what they do. The nurses are the company. The employees are the company. The HQ is there just to support them. And to conclude my talk, Thinkers 50 is an association which names 50 best thinkers in the management world today. It's held every 2 years. So it's been held about 2 weeks ago. and then previously 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, Tom Peters was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award. And they asked him, when he received the Oscar, to give a talk. And the thing he said, which I will conclude my talk with it, is despite the explosion in technology, it still is all about the people. He said, I've spent 30 or 40 years of my life. I gave 10,000 opening keynotes. I've been to almost every country in the world. I've said this at every stage in the world, but we are still not listening. It's a very easy advice to give, but looks like it's very hard for us as managers to actually implement. So my final message to you is, it is really all about the people. Treat your people well, help them grow, and help them help you grow your company. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hvala. Imamo neka pitanja i mikrofon za publiku, tako da hoćemo da krenemo sa ovim. Može? Samo da ja se malo približim da pročitam.
Čekaj da vidim ja onda.
And most importantly, what can we do to change it?
Enrique, there was a similar question to Enrique at the end of his talk, and the one thing he said that we need to know that things have changed. I'm pretty sure that you now know things have changed. The one thing that we need to do is actually dare to do something about it. That's the most important one. I've talked to a lot of managers, a lot of HR managers, a lot of leaders in 20 plus countries around the world. Most of them know these things are going on, but they don't have the courage to actually act on it. So dare, try to experiment, and try to not behave as red deer. Try to cross that imaginary line.
Okay. And another one, is all this the HR fault, or is it just the HR doesn't do enough?
I believe that the HR is actually the collateral damage of general manager's fault. So I believe that in the past 20 or 30 years, HR didn't fight for its right to get a seat at the table. So now it's HR is a scapegoat for things that are going on around the world. I believe that people in HR should actually get their seat at the table, get their say, and then become responsible for what's going on in the world.
Ok, hvala. Da li imamo još neko pitanje? Mikrofon je tu. More questions? Ok, ako nemamo, hvala Vanja.
Thank you once again. Thank you.
Ja zaista verujem da ste čuli dosta korisnih informacija i sada je pravi trenutak da napravimo kratki predah. Rezimirajte utiske uz kaficu pa se vidimo na istom mestu u 12:15.